Some lessons don't come from books. They come from bruises. They come from life.
There is no substitute for experience, period.
Some of the biggest successes were a byproduct of failure.
If you want to learn, build, and grow,
Why not learn from somebody who's already paid the price for success?
the wisdom is in the gray.
This is The Greybeard Show.
Greybeard Show. Learn,
Build.
grow.
And welcome to the show. You're listening to The Greybeard Show, hosted by yours truly. My name is Shawn Davis, but in case you didn't know, in case you didn't hear, just in case it wasn't quite clear, I go by Greybeard. And you're along with me as I'm talking about positive life change. I'm a mentor. I'm a coach. I'm a guide. I'm a 3-time 7-figure entrepreneur. And today I'm going to be talking about something completely different. Today we're talking about something I know many of you are feeling, but maybe haven't put into words yet. You're stuck. Or maybe it feels more like drifting, like you're going through the motions, but not really going anywhere that matters. And here's what I want you to know right up front. If that's you, you're not alone. You're not weak, you're not failing, and you're definitely not crazy. What you are is living in one of the most disorienting periods of time in modern history, especially if you're a person over the age of 55. Let me paint a picture of what you're actually dealing with, because I think when we name it, we take away some of its power. You're living in a world where artificial intelligence is taking jobs, not just factory jobs anymore, but white-collar work, creative work, the kind of work you spent decades building expertise in. You're watching companies downsize, hearing that the skills you've mastered might not matter in 5 years. Maybe you're already out of work and wondering who's going to hire a 58-year-old when they can hire someone younger and cheaper, or worse, just automate the whole position. You're living in a time when politics feels less like democracy and more like a civil war where everybody's enemy is everyone else. You can't have a normal conversation anymore without someone turning it into a fight about which side you're on, the country you grew up in, believing in. The shared values you thought we all had, those seem to be fracturing, and you're not sure where you fit in to this new tribalized version of America. It's exhausting to even follow the news, but it's also scary to ignore it. You're living in an economy where costs are crushing you. Gas, groceries, healthcare, housing, everything costs more than it did even 2 years ago. And your income hasn't kept pace. Maybe you thought you'd be further ahead by now. Maybe you had a retirement plan that doesn't look quite as solid as it once did. You're doing the math in your head, and every time you go to the store, the math isn't adding up the way it should. And on top of all of that external chaos, you're squeezed from both sides by family obligations. Your parents may be aging, maybe they need care, maybe they need money, maybe they need you to help them navigate medical decisions they don't understand. And you want to be there for them because they were there for you. But at the same time, your adult children can't seem to get their footing in this economy. They're back home, or they need help with rent, or they're drowning in student loan debt. And you're trying to help them without completely derailing your own future. You are the sandwich generation, and you're getting pressed from both sides until there's nothing left for you. Is it any wonder people feel stuck? Is it any wonder people feel like they're drifting? This isn't just you having a bad attitude or needing to think more positively. This is the reality of being a person in your 50s or 60s right now, or maybe even older. You've got decades of experience. You've survived recessions and job losses and personal tragedies. You've built something with your life. But now you're looking around, wondering if any of it matters anymore. You're wondering if there's any point in planning when everything feels so uncertain. You're wondering if you've got anything left to give, or if you're just supposed to coast to the finish line and hope you don't run out of gas before you get there. And here's where the real danger comes in. When you feel like this long enough, you stop dreaming. You stop setting goals. You stop building toward anything because it feels pointless. You've probably heard people say the American dream is dead, and maybe you've started to believe them, not because you're cynical, but because you're tired. Because every time you try to get ahead, something knocks you back, because the rules of the game seem to have been changed and nobody handed you the new playbook. So you drift. You go to work if you have to work. You pay the bills if you can pay them. You help your parents and your kids because that's what you do. But somewhere inside, you know you're not really living. You're surviving. You're in survival mode, and survival mode is exhausting because it never ends. There's no winning in survival mode. There's just making it through to the next day. And when you live like that long enough, stuck stops being a feeling and starts being an identity. You start thinking, this is just how it is now. This is just who I am now. I had my shot, and this is what's left. But here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm here to tell you that's a lie. The feeling of being stuck, the pressures you're facing, they're real. The uncertainty's real. But the conclusion that you're done, that you're out of moves, that there's nothing left but coasting, that's not real. That's what happens when you've been in survival mode so long that you forget you have another gear. You're not stuck because you're broken. You're stuck because you're overwhelmed. And when you're overwhelmed, you freeze. You stop making decisions because every decision feels high stakes. It feels heavy. You stop taking action because you're not sure which direction to move. And the longer you stay frozen, the more stuck you feel. And the more stuck you feel, the harder it becomes to move. But here's what I know about people who've lived 5, 6, 7 decades on this planet. You know how to navigate hard things. You've done it before. You've been lost before and you found your way. You've been knocked down before and you got back up. The skills are still there. The strength is still there. What's missing isn't capability. It's clarity. It's direction. It's permission to believe that you still get to want something, that you still get to build something, that your story isn't over just because the world got complicated. Today, we're going to talk about 7 specific steps to getting unstuck before it gets permanent. Before you wear those concrete galoshes that they talk about in those, Sopranos type movies. Not theory, not platitudes, actual practical steps you can take starting today to break out of survival mode and start living by design again. Because the alternative, just drifting until you run out of time, that's not acceptable. You've got too much left to give. You've got too much wisdom, too much experience, too many people who need what you've learned. The world is chaotic, that's true, but chaos doesn't mean you're powerless. It just means you need to be more intentional about where you're going and how you're going to get there. With that in mind, I've written the following 7 steps to get unstuck in your life before it's permanent. 7 clearly articulated steps to get unstuck before it's permanent. If you want to get this guide, all you got to do is text Greybeard, 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 one word, my name, Greybeard, to 84503. If you text Greybeard to 84503, we're going to send you this 7-step guide to getting unstuck before it's permanent in your life. We want to address this quickly. 7 steps to getting unstuck. Wouldn't it be great to not feel like life feels right now? Well, we can help. Text Greybeard to 84503. Once again, text Greybeard to 84503 on your smartphone. You just take out your smartphone, go to your texting app, key in that 84503 number like it's a telephone number from somebody new you just met, and all you do is text my name, Greybeard, Greybeard as in the stuff on your face. Greybeard to 84503. All right, jumping back into it. In the first part of the show, we named the problem. You're living in survival mode because the world has thrown everything at you at once. The economy, politics, AI taking everyone's jobs or will take everyone's jobs, aging parents, adult kids who can't launch, costs that keep climbing, all of it pressing down on you until you feel like you can't breathe, let alone move forward anymore. Now let's talk about how to start moving again. Let's talk about how to end the drift. Let's talk about 7 reasons, 7 things that you can do to get unstuck before you're stuck becomes like cement galoshes and keeps you permanently that way. Okay, I want to give you 7 steps today, and we're going to cover the first 3 right now. These aren't complicated, but they do require something from you. Honesty. They require you to stop numbing out, stop distracting yourself, and start paying attention to what's really going on. And I know that's hard because sometimes not looking at the problem feels safer than facing it. But you can't navigate out of being stuck in your life if you won't look at where stuck is showing up in your life. So let's dive in. Here's the analogy I want you to hold on to throughout this whole conversation. If you're lost in the woods, the first thing you have to do is figure out where you actually are. Not where you wish you were. Not where you were an hour ago before you took that wrong turn. Not where you think you should be based on the map. Where you are. Right now, in this moment. Because here's the thing about being lost. Panic makes you want to just start moving. Anywhere, any direction feels better than standing still. But if you don't know where you are, movement doesn't help. You might be walking deeper into the woods. You might be going in circles. You might be headed away from safety instead of toward it. Most people who feel stuck have never done this assessment. They're so busy moving, or ironically, so busy feeling bad about not moving, that they've never stopped to honestly assess their life. They know that they don't like where they are, but they haven't clearly identified where they are actually looks like. And you cannot navigate out of anywhere if you don't know where you're starting from. So here's what I want you to do. And I mean actually do this, not just thinking about doing it. Answer the questions, the following questions I'm going to ask. Answer them about your life. And if you're in a position where you can write these down, do that. If not, if you're driving, I just want you to think about the top 2 answers that come to your mind first when I ask you some questions. First question. What's actually working in my life right now? Not what used to work 5 years ago, not what other people think is working when they look at you from the outside, not what you think should be working based on how much effort you've put in. What is genuinely, truly working well in your life? What parts of your life are giving you energy instead of draining it? What are you doing that creates value or brings you satisfaction? Maybe it's your relationship with one of your kids. Maybe it's a hobby you've maintained. Maybe it's your physical health, even if everything else is falling apart. Maybe it's a friendship that stood the test of time. Whatever it is, write it down. Second question, what's draining you? What are you tolerating that's slowly killing your spirit? And be specific here. Don't just write work or money. What specifically about work or money is draining you? Is it a toxic boss? Is it that you're doing something that you don't believe in? Is it that you've outgrown the role, but you're afraid to leave because of your age? What specifically about money is the problem? Is it debt? Is it that you're helping other family members financially when you can't afford to? Is it that you have no plan and that uncertainty is eating at you? Maybe what's draining you isn't work or money at all. Maybe it's a relationship that's become toxic. Maybe it's a health issue you keep ignoring because dealing with that would require you to admit that it's serious. Maybe it's resentment you're carrying towards someone and you won't let it go. Maybe it's that you're living someone else's dream instead of your own and you've never admitted that out loud. Whatever it is, write it down, all of it. And the stuff that's obvious and the stuff you don't want to look at, you write it all down. Do a brain dump. Third question, and this is the one that's going to hurt. What am I pretending not to know? What truth have you been avoiding because acknowledging it will require you to make a hard decision in your life, or have a difficult conversation, or admit you've been wrong about something important? Maybe you're pretending not to know that your marriage is in trouble, and ignoring it won't fix it. Maybe you're pretending not to know that your drinking has become a problem. Maybe you're pretending not to know that the business you're in is dying. and you need to make a move before you're forced out. Maybe you're pretending not to know that helping your adult children financially is actually hurting them instead of helping them. Maybe you're pretending not to know that you're angry at God or angry at yourself, and that anger is poisoning everything else. This question, what am I pretending not to know? This is where the real assessment happens, because the things you're avoiding are usually the things keeping you stuck. And here's what I've learned. You cannot get unstuck until you're honest about where stuck actually is. And for a lot of you, stuck isn't everywhere. Some parts of your life are working fine, but there's one or two areas that are anchors dragging you down, and you've been pretending they're not that bad because dealing with them feels overwhelming. Stop pretending. Look at it. Name it. Assess it honestly. That's step one, and it's foundational to everything else we're going to talk about. Here's step number 2. Reclaim your right to dream again. Now, here's where we get to the heart of why you're stuck. Somewhere along the way, maybe recently, maybe years ago, you stopped dreaming. You stopped asking yourself, what do I actually want for my life? And you started only asking, how do I make it through another day? And I totally get it. I understand how it happens. When you're squeezed from both sides, when your aging parents need you and your adult kids need you and the bills are piling up and your job is uncertain and the world feels like it's coming apart at the seams, dreaming feels like a luxury you can't afford. For some, it might even feel irresponsible. It might feel selfish. It might feel like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. So you put your head down, you focus on survival, you tell yourself, I'll think about that. I'll think about what I want after I get through this crisis. But the problem with that is the crisis never ends. There's always another one. And eventually you forget that you're allowed to want anything beyond just making it through your life. But here's what happens when you stop dreaming. You start dying. Maybe not physically, but everything that made you starts to fade away. The goals disappear, the ambition disappears, the sense of personality or possibility disappears, the fire goes out, and eventually you look in the mirror and you don't recognize the person looking back at you. You see someone who's just going through the motions, someone who's alive but not living. You've heard people say the American dream is dead. Maybe you've said it to yourself. Maybe you've looked at the economy and the housing market and the political division, and you've concluded that the idea of building something or of progressing, of having something to show for your work, that's all gone now. But I'm going to push back on that hard. The American dream, the generic one-size-fits-all post-war version where everybody wants the same white picket fence and the same retirement in Florida and the same steady 40-year career with a pension, yeah, maybe that particular version is dead. The world has changed. The economy has changed. The rules have changed. But your personal dreams, those aren't dead unless you've killed them. And a lot of you have killed them, not intentionally, but through neglect, through deciding they don't matter anymore, through concluding that at your age, with your circumstances, dreaming is foolish. And I'm here to tell you that's the lie that keeps you stuck. So here's step number 2. I want you to give yourself permission to want something again. Not what you wanted at 25 when you didn't know anything about life. Not what your parents wanted for you. Not what society says you should want at your age. Some quiet retirement where you fade into the background and stop making waves. What do you want? Right now, today, with everything you know and everything you've survived and everything you've learned. Maybe you want to start a business doing something you actually care about instead of just collecting a paycheck. Maybe you want to get in the best physical shape of your life because you're tired of feeling like your body is failing you. Maybe you want to repair a relationship that broke years ago and you've been telling yourself it's too late. Maybe you want to write a book or learn to play guitar or travel to a place you've always talked about but never made happen. Maybe you want to mentor young men who need you, who need what you've learned. Maybe you just want to wake up in the morning without that knot of dread in your stomach. Whatever it is, write it down and don't edit it. Don't tell yourself it's too late or it's not practical or people will think you're having a midlife crisis or your kids will roll their eyes. Just write it down. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. If you stop dreaming, if you stop striving, if you stop moving forward, if you stop setting goals, why are you surprised that you're stuck? You've got nothing to move forward toward. You've got no direction. You're just drifting through life, reacting to whatever life throws at you, hoping you don't run out of time before something changes. But nothing's going to change until you decide what you want it to change into. You need something to move toward. You need a direction. You need a reason to get out of bed that's bigger than just surviving another day. And that reason doesn't come from outside you. It comes from reconnecting with what you actually want, not what you think you're supposed to want or what you think is still possible for someone your age. Reclaim that. It's still yours. Nobody can take it from you unless you let them. Your circumstances might limit how you pursue it, but they can't kill the dream unless you decide the dream is dead. So what do you want? Really want? Give yourself permission to answer that honestly and write it down. Step 3, design one area of your life on purpose. You've assessed where you are. You've reconnected with what you actually want. Now comes the practical part, the part where we turn awareness into action. You've got to start living by design. Thinking about how you're going to move your life forward, designing the life you want to live instead of by default. But here's the key, and this is where a lot of people mess this up. You can't redesign everything at once. If you try to overhaul your entire life while you're already overwhelmed, while you're already in survival mode, you'll just add one more thing to the pile of things that are crushing you. You'll start strong for about 3 days, and then you'll crash because you took on too much too fast. So we're going to start small and strategic. We're going to just pick one area of your life, just one, and we're going to move that area from reactive to intentional, from being stuck to moving, from drifting to specifying the direction you want to head in. Maybe it's your health, maybe it's your finances, maybe it's your marriage or your closest relationship, maybe it's your work situation, maybe it's your spiritual life. Pick the area that's either causing you the most pain or the area where small changes could create the most relief for you. That's your focus area over the next 90 days. Now, I want you to ask yourself this question. What would this area of your life look like if you were designing it on purpose instead of just reacting to whatever comes at you? Get specific. Paint a picture. If it's your health, what does by design look like? Does it mean you're moving your body 30 minutes a day instead of being sedentary? Does it mean you've cut out the junk food and the alcohol that's making you feel like garbage? Does it mean you finally scheduled that doctor's appointment you've been avoiding for 2 years? Does it mean you're sleeping 7 hours a night instead of 5? If it's your finances, what does by design look like for your finances? Does it mean you've created a real budget instead of just hoping there's money left at the end of the month? Does it mean you've stopped the bleeding on credit card debt? Does it mean you've had an honest conversation with your adult kids about what you can afford and can't afford to help with anymore? Does it mean you've started putting money towards a specific goal instead of just paying bills and wondering where it all went? If it's your work, what does by design look like for your work? Does it mean you're actively looking for something better instead of just complaining about where you are? Does it mean you're building a skill on the side that can help open new doors? Does it mean you're setting boundaries so work doesn't consume every waking hour of your life? Does it mean you're finally pulling the trigger on that business idea you've been thinking about for 3+ years? Here's what I know. And I need you to hear this. You cannot control everything that's happening in the world. You can't control AI. You can't control politics. You can't control inflation or interest rates or what your employer decides to do. You can't control whether your parents get sick or whether your kids make good decisions. But you can control whether you're living your life by design or default. And when you take back control of even one area, if you move from reactive to intentional in just one part of your life, something shifts inside you. You start feeling like you're in control. You start feeling like you can design your life. You start feeling like yourself again. You start to feel like you've got agency. You remember what it's like to be the author of your story instead of just a character getting pushed around by the plot other people are writing. So pick one area. Get specific about by design, what that looks like in that area. Write it down. And then, this is crucial, take one action this week that moves you toward that design. Not next month, not when things calm down. this week because assessment without action is just daydreaming, and we don't have time for that. You've got 3 steps now. You know where you are. Hopefully you know what you want, and you're designing one area of your life on purpose. You're living by intention. You're looking at that area and saying, I'm going to do this. When we come back in just a couple of moments, we're going to talk about steps 4 and 5, setting goals that actually move you forward and finding the right people to surround yourself with, because you can't do this alone, and you shouldn't try. That's part of the reason I'm here. I'm here to help. You shouldn't go this alone. I'm a mentor. I'm a coach, and I've written this following guide. It's 7 steps to get unstuck in your life before it's permanent. 7 steps to get unstuck before it's permanent. You can get this by reaching out to me. If you take out your smartphone, go to your texting app, key in the following number, 84503, like it's a new phone number that for a new friend you just made. You're going to key that in and into your texting app, and you're going to text my name, Greybeard, Greybeard. B-E-A-R-D. Somebody texted me gray beer, and then I've had some very interesting texts. I will say that. So it's Greybeard, like the facial stuff on my chin, the gray stuff on my chin, Greybeard. So text Greybeard to 84503. Let me know you're out there. Let me know that you feel like I hear you, what you're going through, that you're not alone. I've been there. I've been through it myself. How do you think I wrote this guide? I've lived it, building 3 7-figure revenue producing businesses. I did one in financial services. I did one in real estate, fix and flipping, and I did one in solar. I own a solar energy company in California. And so 3 completely different businesses. I've learned a lot about life. I've learned a lot about pressure. I've learned a lot about change. I've learned a lot about getting unstuck through these types of seasons. And I want to share that with you. So text Greybeard to 84503 to get the following guide. 7 steps to get unstuck before it's permanent. Now we're going to talk about how to create momentum, because here's the thing about being stuck. The hardest part isn't staying in motion once you get moving. The hardest part is that you first push to break inertia. Objects at rest stay at rest. And people who've been drifting tend to keep drifting unless something forces them to choose a direction and start moving. So let's talk about steps 4 and 5 of this 7 steps to getting unstuck in your life before it's permanent, which are all about creating that momentum and protecting it once you've got it. So here's step number 4 of the 7. Set one 90-day goal that moves you forward in your life. Here's what most people get wrong about this. They get inspired, they get a vision of what they want their life to look like, and then they create some massive 5-year plan with 17 different goals across every area of their life. And it feels great for about 2 days. Then reality hits. The plan is overwhelming. They don't know where to start. They miss a day, then a week, then they just abandon the whole thing and feel worse than they did before they got started. So we're not doing that. I refuse to do that to you. I want this to be valuable. I want this to be an opportunity for you to actually start to change your life. I want you to set one goal, just one. And I want it to be something you can accomplish in 90 days. Not a 5-year plan, not a vision board with 47 different dreams pinned on it. One concrete, specific goal that you can hit in the next 90 days that proves to yourself that you're not stuck anymore, that you're moving, that you still have agency and control in your own life. Now, this goal needs to be connected to that area you chose in step 3, that area you're designing on purpose. If you chose health, what's one 90-day goal that would significantly improve your health? Maybe it's losing 20 pounds. Maybe it's being able to run a 5K. Maybe it's going 90 days without alcohol. Maybe it's getting your blood pressure or cholesterol under control. If you chose finances, what's one 90-day goal that would create relief? Maybe it's paying off one specific credit card. Maybe it's saving $3,000 in an emergency fund. Maybe it's cutting your monthly expenses by $500. Maybe it's having that hard conversation with your adult children about financial boundaries and sticking to it for 90 days. If you chose your marriage or primary relationship, what's one 90-day goal that would be able to help strengthen that relationship? Maybe it's having a date night every single week for 90 days. Maybe it's going to counseling together. Maybe it's learning to have conflict without contempt. Maybe it's rebuilding intimacy that's been dead for years. If you chose work, what's one 90-day goal that moves you towards something better? Maybe it's applying to 10 jobs that actually excite you. Maybe it's completing an online certification in a new skill. Maybe it's making $5,000 from a side hustle or side business. Maybe it's having a direct conversation with your boss about the changes you need. Here's the key. The goal has to be specific enough that you'll know without question whether you hit it or not. Get healthier is not a goal. Lose 20 pounds is a goal. Be better with money is not a goal. Pay off $4,000 of my Visa credit card bill, that's a goal. Improve my marriage is not a goal. Have 12 date nights in 12 weeks is a goal. And it has to be something that requires you to stretch, but not something so big that it's paralyzing to you. You're trying to build momentum here. We're trying to get you unstuck. We're trying to start that inertia. You're trying to prove to yourself that you can still set a target and hit it. You need a win, not someday, in 90 days. Because here's what happens when you set a 90-day goal and actually hit it. Something shifts in your identity. You stop seeing yourself as stuck. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances in life and of the current economy and the current environment in the U.S. You start seeing yourself as someone who identifies what they want and makes it happen. And that shift in identity, that power, that agency over your life again is more valuable than the goal itself. But you have to actually do it. You can't just write it down and hope it happens. You need to break that 90-day goal into weekly actions. What do you need to do this week to move toward that goal? Then do it every week for 90 days. And if you need an accountability partner, guess what? That's what mentors do. If you need an accountability partner, maybe your family can support you. You need somebody that's going to hold you accountable to doing the thing that you said you were going to do, because we all have those days where life feels heavy, those days where you wake up and it feels like you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. My wife and I, we call them nothing's right days. Those nothing right days, you'll have those in the next 90, and you need somebody that's got your back, somebody that wants better for you, somebody that wants to help you move your life forward. You need them in your corner. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to have a week where life gets crazy and you don't hit your weekly target. You're going to have a moment where you think this isn't working fast enough, or this is harder than I thought. And that's the moment where most people quit. They take on one setback as evidence that they were right to be stuck in the first place. But you're not going to do that, because you're not looking for perfection. You're looking for direction. You're looking for movement. And as long as you're moving more days than you're not, as long as you're making progress, even when it's messy, you're winning. 90 days from now, I want you to look back and see something different than where you are today. I want you to have evidence that you're not stuck anymore. That's step number 4. Step number 5, find your people who are still moving. Let's talk about something that nobody wants to hear, but everybody needs to. The people you're surrounded by are either helping you get unstuck or they're keeping you stuck. There's no neutral. And a lot of you are stuck partly because you're surrounded by people who've given up. People who've decided that dreaming is foolish, especially at your age. That trying is pointless. That this is just how life is now, and there's no point to fighting it. And when you're around that long enough, those type of folk, you start to believe it too. Or maybe worse, you're surrounded by people who need you to stay stuck, so they don't feel alone in their own stuckness. Misery doesn't just love company. Misery recruits company. And if you start moving, if you start building something, if you start improving, it makes other people uncomfortable, because now they have to confront their own lack of movement, and they have to come to the realization that you were able to change your life because you decided to, which means they're in their position because they've decided that as well. So they'll discourage you. They'll tell you that you're too old. They'll tell you it's not realistic. They'll remind you of every time you've tried something and it didn't work out. They'll make jokes about your goals. They'll roll their eyes when you talk about what you're working toward. And they'll do it because your movement threatens their comfort in staying still. You need to understand something. This isn't about judging people or cutting everyone out of your life who isn't perfect. Some of these people are family. Some of them are friends you've had for decades. Some of them are good people who are just struggling themselves. But you have to make a choice. You can stay comfortable in relationships that keep you stuck, or you can do what's necessary to get unstuck, even if that means spending less time with certain people and more time with others. Here's what you need to find. People who are still moving, people who are still building at whatever age you are, people who are still dreaming, especially people your age and older who prove it's possible, because when you're 55, 60, or 65 and you're wondering if you've got anything left to give, nothing is more powerful than being around someone who's 70 and started a new business, or someone who's 58 and in the best shape of their life, or someone who's 62 and just got remarried after a devastating divorce. You need to see proof that forward motion is still possible. You need to be in rooms where people are talking about what they're building, not just complaining about what's broken. You need conversations that leave you energized instead of drained. So where do you find these people? You have to go where they are. Join something. A gym where people are serious about training, a business group where people are actually doing deals, a church or community organization where people are serving and making a difference, a men's group where guys are honest about their struggles but committed to growth, a mastermind, a workshop, a volunteer organization. The specifics don't matter as much as the principle. You need to get around people who are moving in the direction you want to move in your life, because proximity matters. You become like the people you spend time with. Their standards become your standards. Their energy becomes your energy. Their belief in what's possible becomes your belief in what's possible. And let me be clear about something. This doesn't mean you're abandoning your old friends, or you're ghosting your family, or you become some arrogant jerk who thinks they're better than everyone. It means you're intentional about who you spend your time with and what conversations you engage in. Maybe you've got a friend who every time you see him, the conversation is just complaining about politics, complaining about the economy, complaining about how everything's rigged and nothing matters. You don't have to end the friendship, but you might need to see that friend less and spend more time with the guy who's actually doing something about his situation instead of just talking about how bad it is. Maybe you've got family gatherings where everyone sits around and reinforces the same old stories about why nobody in your family ever succeeds at anything. You don't have to skip the gatherings, but you might need to limit how long you stay and make sure you're spending equal or more time with people who tell different stories. Here's the hard truth, though. You can't do this alone. You're not supposed to. Human beings are not built to transform in isolation. We need other people. We need examples. We need accountability. We need encouragement. We need people who believe in us when we don't believe in ourselves. And I, right now, Greybeard, listening to me here on the radio, I believe in you. I believe in a better future for you. I believe you can change your life. I believe you have the control in your power to live differently than you've been living. If you're trying to get in shape, you can't do it surrounded by people who eat garbage and mock you for ordering a salad. If you're trying to build something financially, you can't do it surrounded by people who think ambition is greed. If you're trying to improve your marriage, you can't do it surrounded by men who trash their wives and treat relationships like a burden to endure. You need people who are doing what you're trying to do, or who have already done it. You need people who will tell you the truth even when it's uncomfortable. You need people who will call you out when you're making excuses and celebrate with you when you win. So here's your action step for step 5. In the next 2 weeks, I want you to find one new group, one new community, one new environment where people are moving in the direction you want to move. Show up, introduce yourself, tell them what you're working on, ask questions, listen, learn, engage. And I want you to evaluate your current relationships honestly. Who's helping you move forward in your life? Who's holding you back? You don't have to make any dramatic changes today, but you need to start paying attention and being honest about who you're giving your time and energy to and what kind of effect those people are having on your life, because momentum is fragile when you're first building it. And if you're trying to create movement while surrounded by people who are committed to staying still, you're going to lose every time. Find your people who are still moving. It might be the most important step of all 7 I talk about. When I come back, I'm going to talk about the next 2 steps, the last 2 steps of getting unstuck before it becomes permanent. If you're just now joining the show, if you'd like to get a copy of this, you may have missed the first part of the show. You might have missed the first 5 that we've gone through. So I've got this guide. It's 7 steps to getting unstuck before it's permanent in your life. And you can get it by texting me. If you text Greybeard, my name, G-R, I'm in the E-Y version, not the A-Y, E-Y. Just remember E. I don't know why I did that, but this is what happens when you're doing live radio. Text Greybeard to 84503. Once again, take out your phone, your texting app. Go to your texting app, key in the following number, 84503, like it's a new contact for a new friend you made, because I'd like to be your friend. And I'm a mentor and I'm a coach. And you're going to text me. And you're going to text Greybeard to 84503 because you want to get unstuck. And I've got a guide, 7 steps to get unstuck before it's permanent, about 14 pages. And I'll give it to you. All you got to do is reach out to me by texting Greybeard to 84503. Let me know you're out there. Let me know you're hearing this. Let me know it's resonating with you. And, let's get back into it. All right, we've covered 5 of the 7 steps so far. You've assessed where you are. You've reclaimed your dreams, hopefully. You've designed one area of your life on purpose. You've set a 90-day goal, and you've identified the need to find people who are still moving. Now we're going to close this out with the final 2 steps of how to get unstuck before it's permanent. Step 6, take back control of something small every day. Let's acknowledge the reality we're living in. We talked about this in the opening. You're living in a world where AI is taking jobs and you can't control that. Politics feels like a civil war and you can't control that. Costs keep climbing and you can't control that. Your aging parents need care and you can't control their health declining. Your adult kids are struggling and you can't control their choices. There is so much outside your control that it's easy to start believing everything is outside of your control. And when you believe that, you stop trying and you go into pure survival mode. You just react to whatever gets thrown at you. And that feeling of powerlessness becomes a weight that crushes everything else. But here's the truth. You still control something. In fact, you control more than you think. You just haven't been exercising that control because you've been so focused on all the things you can't control that you forgot about the things you can. So step 6 is this. Every single day, take back control of something small. I'm not talking about changing the world. I'm talking about proving to yourself that you still have agency in your own life. You can control what time you wake up. You can control if you make your bed. You control what you put in your body for breakfast. You control whether you move your body or stay sedentary. You control what you read, what you watch, what you listen to. You control whether you respond to that email in anger or whether you wait an hour and respond with clarity. You control whether you have the hard conversation or keep avoiding it. These seem like small things, and they are small things. But here's what happens when you take control of small things consistently. You start to rebuild your sense of control over your life. You start to remember that you're not just a victim of circumstances. You're someone who makes choices. You're someone who has power, even if that power is limited to your own actions and responses. So let me give you some examples. Maybe every morning you wake up and immediately grab your phone and scroll the news and social media for an hour, and it puts you in a terrible mood before your day even starts. You can't control what's in the news, but you can control whether you look at it first thing in the morning. So you decide for the next 90 days, no phone for the first hour of the day. That's taking back control. Maybe you've been consuming or eating garbage, food, fast food, processed junk, too much alcohol, and you feel terribly physically. You can't control food prices or what's available at the store, but you can control what you put in your body today. So you decide, today, I'm eating real food. Today, I'm drinking water instead of soda. That's taking back control. Maybe you've been sedentary for years and your body's falling apart. You can't control aging, but you can control whether you move today. So you decide, I'm walking for 20 minutes today. Just 20 minutes. That's taking back control. Maybe you've been avoiding a conversation you need to have with your spouse, with your kids, with your boss, because you're afraid of conflict. You can't control how they'll respond, but you can control whether you have the conversation. So you decide, today, I'm saying what needs to be said. That's taking back control. Here's the power of this practice. When you take back control of something small every single day, those small acts of control compound. They build on each other. And over time, you realize that while you can't control everything, you can control enough to change the direction of your life. The feeling of being stuck comes from feeling powerless. The way out of stuck is proving to yourself daily that you are not powerless. You've got more control than you've been exercising, so exercise it. Today and tomorrow and every day after that. Here's the last step of 7 steps to getting unstuck before it's permanent in your life. Step 7, serve someone further behind than you. This is the final step, and it's going to seem counterintuitive. You're stuck, you're overwhelmed, you're barely keeping your own head above water, and I'm going to tell you that the fastest way to get unstuck is to help someone else. Here's why this works. When you're stuck, everything becomes about you. Your problems, your pain, your pressure, your stuckness. And the more you focus on your own stuckness, the more stuck you feel. It's like quicksand. The more you struggle against it, the deeper you sink. But when you shift your focus from your problems to someone else's needs, something changes. You get outside yourself. You remember that you actually have something to give. You realize that as stuck as you feel, you're further along than someone else who needs what you've learned. You're 55, 60, 65 years old. You've survived a lot. You've learned things the hard way. You've made mistakes and recovered from them. You've built things. You've failed at things. You've navigated job losses, financial struggles, relationship problems, health scares, grieving parents that have died, or family members or friends. You've got wisdom that somebody who's 25 or 35 would pay money for if they knew they needed it. So find someone to serve. Mentor a young man who's trying to figure out his career. Help a neighbor who's struggling with something you know how to fix. Volunteer somewhere that needs your skills. Coach someone who's trying to build something you've already built. Use what you know to solve someone else's problem. That's exactly what I'm doing with this show. That's exactly why I'm here. I'm doing that now. This show helps me tremendously because I'm giving back to others. And here's what will happen. You'll remember that you're not useless. You'll remember that your experience matters. You'll remember that you still have something to contribute. And that remembering will pull you out of the stuck place faster than almost anything else, because purpose doesn't come from sitting around thinking about what would make you happy. Purpose comes from contributing something, from making someone else's life better, from using what you've learned to help someone who hasn't learned it yet. You can be drifting in your own life and still be a lighthouse for someone else. And sometimes being the lighthouse reminds you that you know how to navigate after all. So that's step 7. Find someone to serve. Find someone further behind than you. Give them what you've got and watch how quickly your own feelings of being stuck start to break up when you stop obsessing over it and start focusing on helping someone else move forward. Those are your 7 steps to getting unstuck before it's permanent. You know where you are. You hopefully know what you want. You're designing your life on purpose. You've set a goal. You're finding your people. You're taking back control daily, and you're serving someone else. This is an excellent recipe to make sure you're not permanently stuck in your life. However, you might just need one more ingredient to this, and that is accountability from a mentor. So I'm going to do a little bit of a selfish plug here. So I've been doing this mentorship coaching show for about 6 months now. And the reason I did it is I felt the prompting. I felt a calling from God to do this. You know, I've had a lot of experience in business, 35 years. I've been an entrepreneur. I've created 3 7-figure businesses. And I don't say that to toot my own horn. I just give that for context, for understanding of, as you can imagine, the challenges. You know, the business world is not without challenges, and lived through a lot of that. Learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about my strength, learned a lot about my consternation, learned a lot about my grit. in that process. And quite honestly, some of the battles I've been through, some of the worst, most arduous, most depleting battles have strengthened me. They've given me an understanding. They've given me a confidence. And I think that's what God is calling on, as part of doing this show. And so I'm reaching out to you out there in Radio Land. We may have never met. We may never meet. Maybe you're benefiting from the show. Maybe you're listening now, but maybe you need just something extra. Maybe you need that accountability partner. I'm a mentor. You pay me for my time, but I'm a mentor that comes alongside other people and helps them to make sense of what's going on in their business and their life. And the thing is, I will always see your situation differently than you. I have a different level of experience. I have a different life experiences. I have a different viewpoint. I tend to be an optimist. I tend to be a thinker. I'm a outside the box kind of guy. I'm a, how do we approach this different? I pride myself on problem solving, and I would most likely see your situation completely different than you. And so here's my offer. Here's what I'd like to encourage you to consider. If you reach out to me, I've got this guide, 7 steps to get unstuck before it's permanent. It's what we've been talking about this whole show. If you feel like you're drifting in life, like life just happens, like you're just going through the motions, like you're in survival mode, I think you could benefit from this. 7 steps to get unstuck before it's permanent. All you got to do is reach out to me. Text Greybeard to 84503. If you text Greybeard to 84503, that lets me know. Take out your smartphone, go to your texting app, just key in that number, 84503, like it's a new phone number from a friend you just met. I'd like to be your friend. New phone number from a friend you just met. And you're just going to text me. And you're going to text my name, Greybeard. And so that lets me know you'd like this information. We'll send you a couple of questions. What's your name? What's your email address? We'll send it out to you. We'll make sure you get it out to you today. But more importantly, I'll offer you an opportunity to potentially work with me. What does that look like? Well, it could look like a lot of different things. But the first thing it's going to look like is change, progress, accountability. I shoot people straight. I don't pull any punches. I'm direct. I'm real. But here's the advantage. I'm not your family. I'm not your coworker. I'm not your boss. I'm not your subordinate employee. I'm not in your sphere. I'm not in your town. I'm not in any of those things. I come with a completely different viewpoint. I have no affinity to anything that's going on other than serving you in your life, giving you advice and or perspective, wisdom that may be beneficial to what you're going through right now. And so once again, I'd like to encourage you, if that sounds appealing to you, what I offer is something called a Spark Call. We'll reach out to you directly. I'll see if you'd like to take advantage of that. It's a 30-minute call where we have an opportunity to get a little better acquainted, better understand each other. I'd like to understand who you are. You'd probably like to know a little bit more about what I do. And if that has appealed to you, then just text Greybeard to 84503. Greybeard because it's an interesting name. Who's going to remember Shawn? Who's going to remember Shawn Davis? But some guy on the radio, a mentor guy, some 3-time 7-figure revenue producing entrepreneur by the name of Greybeard, that's memorable. That's different. So text Greybeard to 84503. I'll give you the 7 steps to getting unstuck if you're feeling like life is just pushing you around. Life is Groundhog's Day. You're just surviving. You're not really living. I've been there. I know how to show you the way out. Get in touch. Text Greybeard to 84503. And you know what, my friends? Here's what you can do. You can rest assured that I, the mentor, Shawn Davis, otherwise known as Greybeard, that I am going to be back here same time, same place next week to give you more uplift, to encourage you once again, to motivate you to change your life. I'm Greybeard. Have a great week. This is The Greybeard Show.
The Greybeard Show. Learn,
Build.
grow.